In this video, we will take a look at the difference between a class attribute and an instance attribute. Class attributes are variables that are shared across all instances of a class. Instance attributes are unique to each object. As we will see, class attributes are defined directly within the class body and are shared by all instances of the class. We can access class attributes by using the class name or an instance of the class. Let's go over to PyScripter and check it out. We're back in PyScripter where we have defined our point class. We're going to define a class attribute in the body of the class itself. So in here we will say geom underscore type equals point, and that is a class attribute. You don't need the comment, that is just there to make it clear that that is a class attribute. An instance attribute is defined in our constructor function. We'll get rid of this pass keyword. Our instance attributes must begin with the self keyword, or whatever word you used for self up in the constructor. We then follow these with a dot, and we provide the name of the attribute. Often you will see it as the same name as the constructor variables. So like self.x equals x. Just to get into your head, to differentiate, we're going to call our variable something different. We'll call it coord underscore x. Now we can clearly see that this attribute takes on the value provided by x. And we'll do the same for y. Self.coord y equals y. We now have two instance attributes. Let's take a look if I call the point class and I put a dot. See here, I can access the geom type, but I cannot access the coord x and the coord y because those values have not been created yet. So I put in geom type and I will print geom type to screen. I'll comment out these two lines of code here first and I'll run. And we can see that point was printed to screen, and this is because we have set our geom type to equal point for our class attribute. I'll clear the Python interpreter and I'm going to uncomment these lines of code. We'll create point 1 and set that equal to our point class, where our x is 10 and our y is 50. And now when I call point underscore 1 dot, you can see we have access to coord x and coord y along with the geom type. So we have our two instance attributes along with the class attribute. And the instance attributes are unique to that instance of the class, that object. So let's print our coord x. And let's print our point underscore 1 dot coord y. And we can also access the class attribute geom type. So point 1 dot geom type. And we don't need to print this type anymore. I'll remove that and we'll run our code. So we can see we still printed out the class attribute by just using the class itself. We printed out point 1 coord x and y, and also use point 1 to print out the geom type. Let's create a second point. We'll call it point underscore 2 and set that equal to point, and we'll supply in 5 and 12 as the x and y values. We will print point 2 dot coord x, we will print point2 dot coord y, and we will also print point2 dot geom type. I run the code, and we can see that we got the output for our point1 and also for our point2. I'll clear this interpreter window. Let's try and change the geom type before we create our point1 and point2. So we'll say point dot geom type equals, and let's put it down as multipoint. Now when we run the code, we can see that we altered the geom type attribute for our class, and when we created our 2 points, it honored that change. Both had a geom type of multipoint. I'll clear the interpreter window, and let's try something a little bit out there. When you change the value of a class attribute, it affects all instances of the class. We saw here that we changed the multipoint, and then we defined our point1 and our point2. What happens if I change the class attribute after we have created our points? Now I want to print out point1 and point2 geom type again. Let's run the code, and look at that. It changed to multipoint. So all we had to do was change the class attribute geom type in the point class to multipoint, and we simply just re-accessed the geom type. We didn't say update point1 or point2. It automatically updated to multipoint for both our points, even after we had instantiated the objects. So this means that class attributes are not tied to a specific instance. They are shared across all instances of the class. However, instance attributes are unique to that instance of the object, and we can see that with our x and y coordinates. I'll clear the interpreter window. I'll comment out where we update multipoint. Let's update our point1 dot coord x to equal 25. We will then reprint the coord x for our point1 and our point2, and we will run the script. So we can see here that we updated the coord x for our point1, and it did not affect our point2 because these are instance attributes and are unique to each instance of the class. In this video, we took a look at class attributes versus instance attributes. We saw that class attributes are defined in the body of the class itself, and that they are not tied to a specific instance. Changing the value of a class attribute affects all instances of the class. Instance attributes are unique to each object. Altering an instance attribute in one instance does not affect that attribute in another instance. Instance attributes are defined in the constructor function for the class.